All right, joining us now, he's the head coach at UCF Soccer. They get their season going, and we're back in it. It's going to be an exciting year, an inaugural year in the Sun Belt. Of course, great non-conference schedules. Of course, Scott Calabrese joining us here on Black and Gold Banneret. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Happy to be here. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good. What is it like? I mean, we've talked in the past. It's always that eve before that opener. Of course, you got to schedule a marquee opener. Can't
Uh-huh.
with that tradition unlike any other going to Clemson. But what is it like for this group? Are they aware of really kind of a historical year for all of UCF athletics, but men's soccer included?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear to them. I think um, they've gotten the messages from the coaches, from the administration. I think they feel the energy, this different energy, and I think just in the conversations I've had with the guys, there's a level of excitement to be playing new teams that we have never played before, to be in the Sun Belt. So I think they feel it. I'm super excited about it because I know the quality that's ahead of us, and some of the challenges that are ahead of us. So yeah, I think the guys are actually really excited.
You've gone through this before where you go to different conferences and things. What's some of the from a coaching staff standpoint?
Mm.
You're dealing with new schools that you're not used to playing every year like you have maybe in the previous conference. How does that affect the preparation, and just does that bring some extra anxiousness? What's that like?
Well, I think it means that we have to do a little bit more work, and I say that because when you get used to playing a team year in and year out, um, certain teams don't change the way they play. Tulsa's got a way of playing. SMU had a way of playing that you knew when you scheduled that. Well, that game, that this is the formation they were going to play. These are the patterns that you were going to see. These are the players that you were going to see. Um, and so, you already have done preparation for that game in the previous years that you've played them. You know what's coming. And so that's what's going to be a little bit different in this year, is that these are all new teams, and we're going to end up watching a lot more game film to better understand what those teams are trying to do, and then most importantly, then what are we going to do that is going to counteract what they're trying to do, and to be successful against them, and to create chances against them, and to create goals against them, and to find ways to beat these teams.
Can you talk about what it's like to have these new opponents just from a travel perspective? Because with the
Yeah.
exception of Morgantown, you don't share any other, conference play destinations with the rest of UCF's team. So what has that been like from how you structure your non-conference schedule and how you kind of play with that now that you have the new conference stuff?
Yeah, I think the conference travel is harder than the American. The American tended to be bigger cities. These are more college towns, but big programs. Kentucky, University of South Carolina, University of West Virginia. Like, those are all big universities, big brands, and they're harder to get to. So I think that's one of the challenges that we'll have is in the travel. In terms of how we structured our non-conference season, I would say that that's really down to we want to challenge ourselves. We need to play games that are important, games that are significant, that give us an opportunity to get RPI points, to build our resume for the NCAA tournament. And there's a few teams in there from a non-conference standpoint that'll help us do that. There's definitely teams in the Sun Belt that'll help us do that. So I think we've got a really good group of teams that give us the opportunity to build a really strong RPI in case to be in the NCAA tournament. So that's definitely part of it. And then we want to be able to get these teams at home. And so as part of the agreement with Clemson is, okay, yeah, we're going to go and we're going to play Clemson, but then in either 2024 or 25, Clemson's going to come and return to UCF, and then that's going to provide our fans with an incredible opportunity to go and see a marquee game right here in Orlando. And I think that's something that we're always trying to do, with some of these bigger teams.
Speaking of big teams going home and home, you also have FIU back on the schedule. It was a conference matchup last year, and now FIU is going to be coming here. I mean, with the state of Florida being a soccer state as it is, I imagine it's kind of fortunate that you have in-state opponents that you're able to schedule for those purposes you mentioned earlier.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I think the in-state opponents that we have, there are some RPI ones, and then there's also some local ones that are really good. And, I'll say this, it's good with some of our weather to be able to schedule some guys that are local as well, where if you get a game that is unfortunately either postponed due to weather, you can go right there and play that game the next day or later on in the season. So, we've got great local games that we can play. We've got some awesome talent, other teams with really good RPIs in the state of Florida, and we're going to play, all those games. And then we're going to go out of region a little bit and play like the NC States of the world and the Clemsons of the world.
Well, I would assume too that helps, though, that you could play teams in from the ACC, which has been the strongest conference in the sport, and you got teams like NC State coming to your place this year. You mentioned Clemson in the future. That helps too from a geography standpoint. Yes, it's a little bit of a flight, but it's not cross country. That's got to be a benefit.
Yeah, it is, and that's something we've targeted that for a while. We've played Wake, we've played North Carolina, we've played Clemson, or we will be playing Clemson. We've played NC State. So, having the ACC in that close proximity, and being able to get those schools to play home and homes, I think that's a great situation for us, and we'll keep trying to schedule those games.
Let's talk about your team, then the roster. Of course, we got to start with Luca Dorado, what he's meant to your program. You've coached some great players. I mean, Cal Jennings comes to mind for me as the best maybe soccer player I've seen in person that played at UCF. Just talk about Luca and his knack for having come up with the goals that he's done throughout his career and what you expect from him this year.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many positive things that I can say about Luca as a player and as a person. First and foremost, he's just an incredible person. I think we start there, and he's a great teammate. He's a loving guy. He loves his teammates. He loves his team. I think he really feels at home here at UCF. And he plays with a smile in training, and it's a pleasure to have him here, to coach him. I love being around him. I love coaching him. I think that's how everybody feels about him. As a player, there's no doubt he has a knack and an ability to score goals in big situations, important situations. And he gets better and better at it every year. And I think I really enjoy coaching him and helping him grow in both the soccer side of things and in the human side of things. And I think we're going to see great things from Luca this year.
Well, one way that it really helped Luca get elevated to the way he was the support he got from assistmen like Mauricio Villalobos and Gino Vivi, but both of which are off this year. Gino off in the MLS and Mauricio off in Europe. So can you talk about this new this new midfield and who else we could see kind of get into that position to set up players like Luca for goals?
Oh, absolutely. I think all of the top strikers except for one in the world need some assists, right? And the only one in the world that doesn't really need too much help is Messi. Everybody else needs their friends to pass them the ball at the right moment. And I think what you're going to see is that there's going to be some people that step up and fill that role of a Mao, of a Gino. Some of those guys were here already. I think AJ is going to be a guy that is going to help us in the attack from the midfield position. Sometimes he'll be a little bit lower, sometimes he'll be a little bit higher. You're going to see, Anderson. We're going to get Anderson forward quite a bit on the left side, and then Timo on the right side. And I think those guys from the outside back position, you're going to see a little bit of a different approach, because I think both those guys can help coming forward out of the back. And then I think we've got two young guys who have come into the team that are very interesting in the middle, and that's Giannis Bellatroche, French attacking midfield player, really smart player. I think he's a player that's going to help us. Saku is another guy who I think over time will develop and help us. And you know, we're excited to see what those guys are able to do, because I think there's a lot of ability there. And then we also have a guy, Clarence Ardois, who is transferred from Oregon State, and he's a guy that has a knack for the goal himself as well. And so, you know, I think in most of the top teams, what you'll see is that it won't be just one player that's scoring the goals. You know, that usually you've got a player that's got somewhere between 12 and 15 goals, and then you have 2 or 3 others that are each chipping in 7 goals, 6 goals, somewhere in that range, usually a winger or 2, or an attacking mid and a winger. And I think a guy like Clarence, he absolutely has goals in him. I think Giannis has goals in him. We want to see Ema step up this year and be a threat on the wing, which I think he can do. You know, there's some other young guys. It's still quite early for us. I want to say we've only really been in preseason camp. I don't think it's been 2 weeks yet. So we're seeing a lot of promise from a lot of different sources.
Well, and that's the thing that's always marveled about soccer to me. You and Tiff have, I think, one of the toughest jobs in that, you know, when your players come back to report, you have a short period of time before your opener. So you're kind of learning on the fly. And we've discussed this at length about how it's a sprint. And that's why you've campaigned for being a 2-semester sport in part because of that. So
Absolutely.
how as a coach do you cram there's that balancing act of you want them to be on the same page and have that chemistry, so you don't, but you want to also kind of implement a lot of stuff. How do you balance all that?
It's really difficult, and no matter what you do, especially I think we play in a more complicated way than a lot of other teams, and I do think it takes longer for us to really understand, for the players to understand how we're going to play. So you're going into your first game, and you know that you have not covered everything that you need to cover. You are underprepared. The only solace you can take is that you also know that the team you're playing is also underprepared. and it's probably going to be a matter of, okay, if we're hopefully what we didn't give enough attention to doesn't hurt us, and that we put our efforts and our energy and our focus on things that are really going to help us. And we hope that what the other team didn't cover, we hurt them on. So it's something that it's a gravity problem. We know we're not ready. It's difficult as a coach, where you want to control everything, right, and get all that information to your players to know it, but you just have to live with it until we change our system. And the best thing we can do is we can change our system so that we can better prepare our players, and that they go into the season more better organized.
Where are we as far as, I know we've talked in the past about it. COVID obviously threw a lot of those plans back in the back burner. It's especially as far as becoming a 2-semester sport. Tennis has now become a 2-semester sport since we last talked. So they're going to that route. I don't know if they stole it from you guys or not, but where are we with that? Are we any closer to that? And is there even a consideration of maybe starting the season a little further back if you can't get the 2-semester, maybe starting the season a little later to give you even more time, the preparation?
I think the last I heard on the conversation is that we had to wait until we've had this transformation committee come down with some new directives, right? And so the transformation committee met. They've put forth all these proposals. A lot of these proposals have been adopted, and all of the, I guess, mechanisms, the administrators, that were moving towards this 2-semester model said, hey, we have to pause until we understand what the NCAA looks like before we can say we can do this or not. So now that's happened. And I'm not 100% sure where that leaves us. I think the coaches still want to move forward and create a better system. You may see this happen, I'm not sure, with maybe a conference or two jumps the gun and just does it. Yeah, I don't know if that's what's going to happen, but I've just different conversations I've had with various people have said that is a possibility, that a conference may decide, okay, no, we're going to do this, because they have that power to do that if they're a P5 conference. I'm not sure if P5 even exists anymore, if it's P4 or what it is, but there's still a desire to do it. I'm not fully aware of what now the next step is. But I'm sure it'll come back up at the end of this season. And I hope we move towards it, because I think for so many reasons we've discussed before, this is a better model.
Yeah, and I agree. Go ahead, Bryson.
It's an interesting direction, because you talk about the P5, but of course in men's soccer, 2 P5 conferences don't have men's soccer, the Big 12 right. being among them. And and speaking of power, you have 3 Power 5, programs in your first conference schedule with West Virginia and Kentucky, and then throw in Marshall in there, the former national championship. I mean, that's a pretty big conference opener right there from that perspective.
For sure. I think there's some big teams that are, you have 2 SEC teams in there in South Carolina and Kentucky, and then you've got UCF and West Virginia as the Big 12 teams. So there's a few P5s right there, and then of course ACC sponsors it, and the Big 10. Those are big conferences for men's soccer. So I think there is amongst that group and a number of other programs that maybe aren't in the Power 5, a real desire to move in the direction of a 2-semester model.
Well, everybody figures all that out, which I feel like everybody's trying to figure out college athletics nowadays. We'll worry about what's going on the pitch. I want to start talk about your defense, and start at goal, of course, and Munoz. What did you where have you seen from him this offseason, the growth? He was so young last year, learn on the fly, if you will. What did you see? What have you seen from him going into this year?
I feel like there's a ton of growth in Wanby, and that growth is in his calmness and his presence, where he's a really fiery guy and an intense and passionate guy. Maybe sometimes during last season, in his first season, it went to a point where it didn't help his performance. It started to hurt his performance. And I think where he's gotten to now is that he's just stronger mentally. And I think it's really, when things are going well, it's really easy to be strong mentally, right? It's when you give up a goal, or your defender makes a mistake, or you play a pass, or you're oftentimes it could be a teammate that plays a pass that is the wrong pass, or the referee makes a decision that you don't like, right? In those moments, I think that's when we're going to see Wanby as a more mature person. And I think he'll still have passion to him. He'll still be fiery and intense, but I think what you'll see is he won't get carried away with it, and he'll be able to then pay attention to what's important and perform in the moment. And I think that's going to be the biggest step that Wanby is going to take, and it's going to make him a better leader too.
Then on the back line, you've got some returners, you got some new faces there. Talk about the defense there, because I know you've said it over the years. When you've been a championship team, people focus on the offense and the excitement there, but it's really the back line that's been the key there, and the consistency there. What do you see from your group there this season?
Well, I see a lot more maturity. I see more consistency in the way that we're able to play. Anderson's obviously, he's a staple back there, has been a staple back there. And I think he's improved as a defender. going forward, he's always been a player that adds something to the attack. And I think what you'll see this year is he's also become a better defender. And so, that's the left back position. And then Rafa was a transfer from Pitt last season and had an up and down season because he had a lot of injuries. He had a lot going on academically too. He was a very strong. He was in a very strong major as a grad student, and it put a lot of pressure on him. And we don't often talk about this, but that took away a bit from the energy he could give to the football. And I think you're going to see a different Rafa this year. And we'll use him sometimes as a left center back, and we'll use him sometimes as a left back. And that might give Anderson a little bit of a chance to get higher on the left side if we play Rafa as the left back. And then you've got a couple other guys in Jonas, who's come in as a graduate student. I think he's got a lot of potential to help us. Had a little bit of an injury in preseason, but now is coming back from it. But I think you're going to see great things from him. And then I'm really excited to have Zane Bub back. Another player who struggled last season with injuries very early on. He had an ACL, so he's back. He's a transfer from Virginia Tech. He's got a physical presence. He's got a presence in terms of leadership at the back. He's 6'4". He can win balls in the air, which is something that hurt us last year, is set pieces. And I think he's someone that can help us with that. And then we have Timo's back. He was another player that was injured for most of last year. And so Timothy's back. He's healthy. He's starting to get back to playing football at the level he's capable of. And then we added a guy, Ron Dekan, who he's an Israeli player, and I think he can help us as a right back. And these guys all bring something different. And we still have one or two other guys who are also coming back from injury that I think when we have everyone healthy, there's going to be some tough decisions that we'll have to make as a coaching staff in terms of who's gonna play. But I think we're going to have a strong back line, stronger than in the past 2 years for sure.
Sounds like you've got more depth that maybe you've had the last couple of years. Obviously, that's a lot. Some of the injuries you had to deal with last year, which, I know you don't want to talk about because, that's part of the game, but you did get hit with some injuries that kind of hurt your, kind of exposed perhaps some depth issues you had. Do you feel you've got that depth this year, especially, and it sounds weird to say this since we're used to this in summer in Florida, but it is hot, like in the 90s to 100, and that could play a factor from a conditioning standpoint early in the year.
There's no doubt. So we're going to play Thursday, then we're going to have to turn around. We're going to have to play Sunday. And the reality is that we're not going to be able to play the same team Thursday and Sunday and then turn around and play Friday. So we're going to need to go a lot deeper this season. And I think we have that in our team. We still have some guys coming back from injury that I'd love for them to be healthy, because then I would feel like, okay, we have real depth, because I have to make a choice, not have the choice kind of being made for me because they're not available. But I do think when everybody's healthy, that we have real depth, and we have real depth in every position. And I don't think that was the case last year. I do think that's the case this year.
You're coming off of your first losing season in your tenure here at UCF. Obviously, injuries kind of affected that, and the American was supersized. But I just want to ask, how do you rebound from a season like that maybe doesn't go your way from that perspective?
Well, what I'll tell you is it started the day after the season ended. And it started by the staff trying to understand, okay, what didn't we do that we needed to do in that season, right? What do we need to be at the level that we expect? Because that was below our standards. What do we need to do to be at the level that we expect to be at from, let's say that season ended November 10th, from November 11th till August 24th, what do we need to do? And we put a lot of thought into, where we need to improve. And, one of the very first things we did is we recruited at a really high level, because we thought, okay, not only are we losing some players to graduation and turning pro, but we also need to add to this team in real meaningful ways. And so I felt like we worked incredibly hard in that offseason, because I feel like you're going to suffer. Either you're going to suffer in January, February, and March by being on the road, or you're going to suffer in September, October, November. And we decided, okay, we're going to really work in January, February, March, and recruit at a high level. And I thought that was really important. I think we did that. And then we worked with the players that we had. And I think one of the signs that we have a good program and a really good culture is that, some of our top players, they're all here, right? When you look at Anderson and Luca and AJ, and there's a lot of guys. That was a hard season. Losing seasons are very difficult. And they are like, nope, we're in. We are here. We're with UCF. We love the team. We love this program, and then we believe that we're going to build back into the type of program that we can all be proud of. So, and now that we've done that part, now it's okay. Now we get to coach this team, this really exciting team, and organize them and talk about our culture that we want to create. To talk about, okay, when things go poorly, and Luca alluded to this in his conversation. I think, okay, if things go well, yeah, everything's great. But when things are tough, because there's no way you play a schedule like the schedule we've got and everything's just going to go perfectly according to plan. These other teams are too good. And so when things are tough, and if, let's say, we concede a goal, how do we react to that? Let's say we have bad moments in a game. How do we react to those moments? That's going to be so important. And I think that's where the culture of this group is significantly better. And we'll see. We'll of course see that.
Well, and it gets going against a team that many believe are picking to go to the College Cup, and Clemson was a favorite in the ACC.
100%.
You've told me this in the past, that you will learn something about your team, that you always have a question or two in your mind going into that opener, that you're going to get some answers. Yeah. What questions do you have that you're looking forward to finding out about your team starting this with the opener against Clemson?
Yeah, I think the number one question is, because it's going to be tough and it's a great environment. All right, what's the mentality of the group? All right, how do we react to the tough moments? When things go poorly, how are we hanging our heads, or are we picking each other up, and are we working for each other, right? And I think when we see that and we get to understand that, we'll know if we're on the right path or we need to bring attention to that. I think we're going to see a different mentality. I think it's all going to start with the mentality of the group, in good and in difficult times, how we deal with that, and that we're unshakable in those moments. And then that'll tell us a lot, because I do think we're learning how to play in this style with so many new players, and that's going to take a little bit. But that's okay. That's understood. That's understood that on day one we're not the finished article, but that we're working towards it.
Well, Coach, good luck this season. Appreciate you taking the time from a busy schedule to talk to us, and we'll look forward to seeing you out there throughout the year.
All right, great talking to you guys. We will see you soon.